his story and share his experience, strength, and hope with us for the next 20 minutes. Our speakers are men who have at least 6 months of current abstinence. Everyone except the speakers should mute themselves now so we don't have background noise. Our speaker tonight is Robert H. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
And how did you want your time this evening, Robert?
20 minutes. I got a timer here too. I just turned on.
Okay. Do you want to notice after 15 or?
No, I'll be fine because I got a timer right here, Mike. And I'll watch it. So I'll know.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Continue. All right. Okay. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to share a little bit of what it was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. I originally, my first times of compulsive overeating as a child, I remember my mom would fix certain foods and I would overeat them to the point that I would feel this numbness. It just felt so good. And then as I got older and in school, I had this weight problem and it was very aggravating for me. And I was so ashamed of myself. And then in high school, I was dating this one girl and she wanted someone to cheer for her or to cheer for in pep club and stuff like that. So I joined wrestling. That was in my senior year. And I went from 225 down to 170. I mean, I realized numbers aren't important, but there was a certain emptiness that I found when I'd lost this weight because I thought that I should be happy and I just wasn't experiencing this happiness that I thought I should be experiencing. Anyhow, I went to a trade school, took up diesel technician, and I guess I should say, as I introduced myself, I'm sorry that I'm a little bad here. I'm from the Omaha area, a town by the name of Plattsmouth. And I'm 69 years old. So we're talking back in 1970 when I'm talking high school. That's when I graduated. And anyhow, after I went to tech school, then I got married and I still had this weight problem. And then I joined Weight Watchers and I become one of those Weight Watcher stars because I'd lose the weight so fast, but then I couldn't keep it off. I had my lifetime membership with Weight Watchers, and so for, I don't know, seems like I'd go back, I'd use that membership, and I would lose the weight, and then pretty soon it would creep back on. Well, then I decided if I become a lecturer for Weight Watchers, well, I'd have to keep it off. All that did is create more pressure. Because there comes a time when I didn't understand what was going on in my head. And I'd get back into compulsive eating again. Well, then at that time, this is before the internet days, in the Omaha World Herald, they had a section, this Dear Abby or Ann Landers, whichever one, and the story about a 12-step group called Overeaters Anonymous. And at a church function, I was talking to a lady, and they had a group of Overeaters Anonymous group, and she had given me a Lifeline, which is, as many of you probably know, the Lifeline was formerly the magazine that Overeaters Anonymous had published, and no longer do they do that. But I read that from cover to cover, and I was just so impressed with it. And I identified, what was neat is that I was able to identify with other people. I mean, there was other people out there like me. They could lose the weight, but they couldn't keep it off. I mean, what's the drive? What was the problem with it? And anyhow, so in the fall of 1989, I joined my first OA group. It was a men's group. It was in West Omaha. Wow. I mean, here we sit down and these men start sharing things, and men don't share. I mean, my experience with men has been they could be standing in a lake, freezing cold with alligators all around and snowing, and everything's fine, And here these men were sharing stories, and I fell in love with Overeaters Anonymous. I really fell in love, and I went from compulsive overeater to a compulsive dieter. I was living a very rigid lifestyle, and I was enjoying the stories. I for 7 years I was squeaky clean. I probably had a bit of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde attitude. My wife didn't know which person I was going to be. I was either terribly crabby or happy, whichever. But it was very difficult. She even left me for a while. Fortunately, we're still together today. As time went on and I started leading groups myself in Overeaters Anonymous, I went to AA Central Office to pick up literature. And one of the ladies there in the group, I had grabbed a whole bunch of stuff. And at this time, Overeaters Anonymous allowed a lot of other literature from other places. And AA did too. So I grabbed all this literature and I walked to the front desk, and the lady said there, "Well, what are you doing?" And I says, "Well, I'm working on my recovery." That's why, because part of my compulsion when I was working on the recovery was to try to read everything. I mean, I joined AA, I joined OA. Well, I was joining OA, but I joined AA, and I even went to Al-Anon meetings because I was just wanted to know everything about the program. And it was part of my compulsive nature. And this lady looked at me and she held up the big book and she stuck at my face and said, "You know something? Everything you need to know is in this book. It's in the first 164 pages. You don't need all that other stuff." So from about that time on, I become somewhat of a big book thumper. Bill Wilson in AA Comes of Age wrote a statement that says that the good is the enemy of the best. And speaking for myself, the best for me to do is to work on recovery through the AA book. I'm not saying anything against OA stuff, but I do. And AA, the AA big book is approved, so this is what we work on, or what I've been working on. And Mike had mentioned to me that I need to pick a topic for tonight. My topic was going to be step 1, and the doctor's opinion on page XXVI in the 3rd edition is what I'm going to read. And anyhow, this is what reminds me of what my working with my recovery has been, or how difficult it is. Anyway, Dr. Silkworth, he had written this. He says, men and women overeat essentially because they like the effects produced by the food. The cessation is so exclusive that while admitting it's injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their overeating lifestyle seems a normal one. They are restless, irritable, discontented, unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes by once overeating. Overeating which they see others do with impunity. After they had succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomena of the craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to do that again. This is repeated over and over. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for overeating. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And that's when the whole thing started to make sense to me on this overeating problems that I've had. And I still have problems with it. I mean, the 3rd tradition said the only requirement for an OA membership is the desire to stop eating compulsively. I wouldn't come to OA if it wasn't that I wanted to lose weight, because overeating it can be therapeutic, but it's not the right way for me to do it. I have to follow the big book. Even in a vision, there's also earlier the group read a vision for you out of the brown book of Overeaters Anonymous. there's also a vision for you in the back of the first 164 pages of Overeaters Anonymous, not Overeaters Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, that talks about the relationship that I have to have with my fellow overeaters. And Mike, our leader tonight for the meetings tonight, and we've been together in a Friday night group that was a big book study in Omaha until the pandemic. And we listened to guys like Joe and Charlie, they lead a big book study. There's another gentleman by name of Harlan that's in Overeaters Anonymous that leads a big book study. A fellow by name of Lori that leads a big book study out of Winnipeg, Canada. And then there's also these two gals, Barb and Julie, that has a big book study. And they've been most helpful for me because they give me a strong foundation of what I need to know and believe in. I get stuck on this thing because I don't usually speak that often, but I do have still struggle with it sometimes with my compulsive reading. I've got 184 days that I have had squeaky clean abstinence. And it's not that squeaky clean that I worry about. I mean, if I have to, because I still farm, once in a while I have to skip a meal because things have to be done, because there's a certain amount of time that stuff has to be done. And I don't beat myself up for it. It's just a food thing. I still work a lot out of the big book. And then the meetings are Friday night. So anyhow, roughly there's about, I got 8 minutes left here, I see, and I've kind of told my story here. So Mike, if you want to open up for sharing.
Thank you, Robert.
The recording has stopped.